in another market that you can learn quite a bit from.
That's great. Thank you. And then from Boston, we have Michael Carucci from Gibson, Sotheby's International Realty. Hi, Michael. Michael, sorry, you need to unmute.
Hi, Elsie. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
And then finally, last but not least, we have Ray representing Canada today. Ray's based out of Toronto, so he'll be speaking about that market.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here and see you all well and excited for the panel discussion today.
Great. So the main point of today's discussion is that, of course, the global real estate arena is changing. Naturally, it turned a lot during this COVID-19 quarantine period. I think that we're about 3 months in, so picture may be a little bit clearer in terms of buyers' demands and how developers are reimagining how they build projects. So my first question that I have to everyone is just, I would love to know what's going on in your market, specifically in new development right now, in terms of the buyer's demands, in terms of the price points, and in terms of whether their requirements have changed for property. Shall we start with Miami?
Sure. It's always good to start with sunny Miami, right? Although I wish I was out, I wish I had a better backdrop for everybody because I really am in South Florida. It's interesting what's happening. From my perspective, I represent one of really the top luxury building in Miami. It's certainly one of the most expensive buildings. It's 1000 Museum by Zaha Hadid Architects. They're all larger units. They start at 5 million and go to up to 25 million in the building. We have seen, I will tell you, there seemed to be, from my perspective, there seemed to be kind of a silver lining with the whole COVID situation because we've actually done more business. And I know this sounds a little shocking, but we've done more business in the last, I would say, 60 days than we have done, than we did last year combined. The developers, also the building's finished. So obviously we have a finished product at this point, which also helped us. But we have done an unbelievable amount of numbers. We're going to announce $75 million in sales, all done in the last about 60 days. And buyers really were coming from New York. They're coming. We have a lot of local buyers. I know Stan, mentioned earlier. He talked a little bit about New York market, but with me before the webinar. But I will tell you, there's definitely a lot of New Yorkers coming. I'm seeing a lot of New Yorkers. We're seeing a lot of people definitely feel like they can get, a good buy, which I think they can. I think it's a very, very good time to buy. I think that message is out there in the world of buyers. And the buyers that come to Miami are East Coast USA. We've gotten a couple LA buyers recently. But all of the deals that we've done, which are maybe like 8 or 9 that we've just sold pretty close. And then we have another 5 that I would say are pending, but they're all composed of East Coast USA. Majority is New York. And then a lot of local people who've been looking at the building, waiting for maybe an opportunity to come where there's pricing. So it was a double-edged sword. We had issues with COVID and everything shut down, but yet their prices kind of dropped. They didn't necessarily lower their prices, but they became a lot more negotiable than they were. So that's what really, I think, helped us. But we definitely are seeing an influx of buyers, as I mentioned, from all over. The market never changed. It was always this, but definitely we're seeing more people come out of New York right now.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Michael, what's going on in Boston?
Well, we're still experiencing a bit of a supply side problem, but we've slowed a little bit in the urban setting. Our suburban markets have really increased, and our second homes down in the Cape and Islands area have certainly increased. We don't know whether this sort of exodus out of the high density urban setting is short-term or temporary, but we are starting to see a little bit. But pre-COVID, sales were robust. We're doing the St. Regis residence in Boston, and we're just getting under construction now, and our pre-sales are up around 30%.
Great. So, Ray, tell us what's happening in Canada.
So the market was really moving. Like, we had a great year to start with, and right after mid-March, when the pandemic has started, we faced a drop in the activity, almost 70%. But the good point is that prices hold on same price range, and it wasn't that affected. Of course, you can get good deals, realistically speaking, here and there, but prices were steady, and market showed a good holding position. As we moved forward, April and May, like from mid-April onwards, the activity has started coming back to the market, and every week we're seeing more activity than the week before. The inventory was low, lower than last year's similar time, and the activity, of course, was less, but prices were within the same range. And I think in the coming months, we're gonna see more activity coming to the market, and we're not going to see a price drop in pre-construction, for example, but we're going to see some incentives and good offering to the buyers. So it will be interesting to get into the market, definitely, in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ryan, what's happening in Chicago?
So we've been allowed to show this whole time, which has been kind of interesting. I've talked to various colleagues who have not had that option. Traffic is certainly way down. It is, picked up in the last week or so. But I will say the one silver lining we've seen here is the quality of traffic is much higher. The numbers are down, but the people looking seem to be more serious and focused. There's less people just kind of casually looking, where these are people that want to make a move. Some of the deals we've done recently, a lot of them have been relocations, whether they got relocated for work. One gentleman actually drove here from Boston, looked at 4 houses, FaceTimed his wife in the meantime, and wrote an offer, an hour after doing that. So it's interesting to see how people are adapting to this. I've seen, there's certainly a pocket of people that have a wait and see attitude to see what would happen. I think the general consensus is prices should come down, but the data isn't really there to support it yet, other than there's just less transactions going on. That being said, on the other side of the coin, we've got some clients that have, were planning to move, or it was on the horizon. I think being locked in their house to sort of fast track this move for them, and I think some of them think maybe now I can get a little bit better deal than maybe I could have before. While the data doesn't necessarily suggest a discount, I do think buyers and sellers are somewhat reasonable, that some sellers will take a little bit less than maybe they would before this happened, just to know they're done with it and can move on.
Thank you. Stan, what's happening in the Big Apple?
Yeah. Well, the Big Apple is not as shiny today as we may have been in the past, but we'll shine her up again, don't worry. If there's one thing I've learned over 20 years in New York real estate, is that New York is a global city and will maintain global demand. It always has, I believe it always will. And I'm the ultimate cheerleader for New York City. It's interesting because some of the things that I've heard, like Harvey talking about, it was when the beautiful building, and I was with Harvey during construction at this extraordinary Zaha Hadid building, but it was still coming. And I think it was right around that time, both in Miami and in New York, where we started to see pre-sales, in other words, properties that wouldn't be closed, let's say, for more than 6 months out, really start to have buyers say, well, maybe I'll come back in 3 or 4 months. Let me see what the product's going to look like. And we also had a market that was decreasing in Manhattan since 2016. So, and to Michael's point, the supply was very high. So before we can even get to COVID, we had too much supply, too much new construction, a glut of inventory, and we had a change from, on the new construction side, buying from pre-delivery, 6 months plus out, to waiting for the property to be able to be, signed contract, closed within 3 to 6 months at the outset. As we kept moving through, that time got tighter. So where we stand today in the New York City real estate market is really an inhale, and we haven't really seen too much exhale yet. Certainly not in the luxury sector. As you know, I'm representing the Woolworth Tower residences, and our new development arm is also representing 555 West End Avenue. We just completed a full sellout with my fabulous colleagues at 212 Fifth Avenue, including penthouse record sale last year. So this kind of boutique, small number of unit building, I think, is where we're at. And for us, we've always been tied directly to the stock market. New York City's real estate market goes up when the stock market's up, it goes down when the stock market's down. And it was from 2016 through January, it was the first time where the indices were down on average. Real estate market was down on average 22% for all property over 5 million, while we had a frothy indice across the board for the financial markets. So what's happened is this correction has really brought the two markets into parity, and it will be very, very interesting to see when everyone sort of comes back in the luxury sector. One of the challenges we're having is most of the buyers in our price category for buildings like the Woolworth Tower or above 5 million likely already had a property outside of the city, and they have gone there, whether it's the Hamptons or to Connecticut or to New Jersey. And a lot of people, I think, rightly are saying that they may stay there as the summer runs through. Ray, you were talking about earlier, pre-call, the phase 1 and phase 2 and all of that. And no one knows exactly when each of those dates will be. We have some hopeful dates that we hope will stick. But I don't think we'll see full capacity and full demand back this summer. But what we do have is a huge increase in looking, a huge increase in qualified buyers emailing. There's a lot of pent up demand, and I think it's going to be a bit of a shot out of a cannon. So looking forward to that. I'll just say briefly on Woolworth, mimicking what Harvey is saying in Miami and Michael for Boston with the Ritz-Carlton residences. We had 4 contracts signed at Woolworth in the 3 weeks before the stay-at-home order. 3 of those have closed. 1 will close next week. And we had 5 additional written offers. So it was 9 written offers over a very short period of time. Now, New York City also had to go through a new mansion tax, which really stalled our markets, and the SALT tax consequences, which affected buyers in our market. So we'd already kind of been heading out through some headwinds as we passed the second quarter of 2019. So we were already a bit pushed on our back heels. We were just starting to come out of it, and then COVID shut us down. So what happens after the shutdown requires the crystal ball that if all of us had, we'd all be retired, living on yachts. It would all be very lovely, and we'd just call in. But I hope today to get my crystal ball as shiny and clear as possible with all of you.
Well, I'll just speak a little bit about Los Angeles and Dubai. So I'm currently now in LA. Like a lot of you have said, there's been a massive buyer expectation to kind of come in and swoop up these amazing COVID deals. We haven't really seen them, to be honest. We in Los Angeles don't really have enough inventory. It's more of a seller's market here, especially in the kind of lower price points. We've been allowed to tour properties. We were deemed an essential business, so we've been able to pretty much carry on things as normal. In some ways, I remember someone was saying that like there's kind of less inquiries, but more serious inquiries. We kind of feel the same here. People definitely are not gonna go out and see loads of properties if they really don't have an urgent kind of need to buy something. So we've also felt that a lot of our buyers are very, very serious right now, the ones that want to go out. And actually we do most of the filtration process through our virtual tools. And when we get to, let's say, a couple of final properties that the client's looking at that point, we would go and view them. In terms of pre-construction here, luxury high-rises are only really in downtown Los Angeles. Most of those buildings are rentals. What we've seen since COVID is there's been a lot of incentives coming from the developers for like free rent for a certain amount of weeks, some kind of breaks in that sense. Our developers have been slightly flexible in pricing, but they kind of haven't really had to. So that's what's been going on in LA. As for Dubai, very interesting reaction to the whole situation. They were actually very quick in, quick out in terms of quarantine. On March 15th, they locked down the entire country for about 30 days. People were not, they couldn't even go to the grocery store. They closed the airport. They grounded all the Emirates flights, which was pretty interesting. So, the cases were very, very low there. So they kind of really contained the problem very quickly. Also, Dubai is used to having around 60-70% of an international buyer anyway. So they're very much used to people buying sight unseen, buying, pre-construction. Pre-construction definitely slowed down, but the developers have actually made some ties with some banks, which has been really interesting, where they're offering interest-free mortgages up to 7 years post-construction. So that's definitely pushed things forward. And in terms of demand, we're seeing a lot more demand for townhouses and villas right now. I'm not sure if this is purely a reaction to COVID. I'm sure you all saw this after 9/11. It remains to be seen whether this is a trend going forward. So all of you, of course, Sotheby's international realty agents, I would like to know how this brand has helped you to sell your developments in your territories, and which unique tools have you found to be most helpful in sales and marketing your developments? Shall we start with Miami?
Sure. It's interesting because I would say what's been great, a really big help for us to market our projects. I mean, we have projects, all over South Florida, including up in Fort Lauderdale Beach, down to Miami. Now we're expanding up even in Boca, Del Rey, Vero Beach. We're launching something on the ocean soon. So just with all of the products in general, I can tell you that having the network, from my perspective, has been just tremendous. I have done, various events in cities. Some of you on the call, we've been working together for a while and have done business together. But I definitely feel that the network is a tremendous help. We worked with events. I find email to me, there's a lot of traditional things that we do. And I always find, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So for me, the way that I market things, and what's really helped me tremendously have been my social media has been really huge for me. And also direct email campaigns have been great. It's helped me because I've managed to, and I know that my firm, along with myself, have really put together a very substantial email list, of the network all throughout the United States, even through the world for that matter. So I think having the brand just as a whole with the network really helps. It's building relationships one-on-one helps. I'm a relationship guy. That's what I've always done, is just build relationships with people. Tamara, you and I built one, which is really nice. And I think all of us on the call here have. Ray, I need to hook up with you more, that's for sure, which I intend to do. But I think the personal relationship for me really is everything, I would have to tell you. And of course, as I said before, utilizing emails, campaigning, utilizing social media. Look, the whole COVID thing also, I think, has dramatically changed the way that we do business and how we work and how we market and what we do, things that we're doing today. I actually am in touch with more people than I even was before. So I think, the whole COVID thing has changed the game a lot. you know, because you're definitely, you know, I've been talking to Mai de la Vega, the owner of our, you know, firm, is I'm seeing her more, we're talking more, we're in touch more, we're seeing each other's faces more, we're all connecting more. So I think it's really brought people in a lot of ways closer together. So the use of technology and what's happening, I think is really advantageous for the market. It's advantageous for our personal relationships. It's really worked wonders, and I think it's even going to continue, you know, like this. So I don't even see the webinar stopping. I don't see any of this. I think it's just going to continue to do business like this. Now, Stan mentioned, I believe earlier, that you could, or I think actually Ryan might have mentioned it, but you can actually, they're still showing, you're still going into buildings, you're still meeting people, you're still doing it. We've had that chance in Miami. Our building didn't close. So we, you know, obviously we were masked, we go in, but just the overall way that it's being presented and how it's done, things are definitely, I think, improving a lot. And I think because of the personal relationships that we have with people, the way that the way that the communications it's a lot more streamlined on how it's working with us. And it's definitely been really terrific. And I see it continuing that way as we go on with our lives here.
Great. Michael.
Well, I think Harvey nailed it. It's about our network. It's about our brand. And I think as we go through these challenges, it's even more important to keep these strategic alliances in place. I mean, Sotheby's is a global brand, and the real estate market has really become global. You're seeing a lot of ultra high net worth individuals that have multiple homes in multiple locations. And so I think that these types of relationships are what get you through this.
Yeah. Ray.
Well, with all mentioned from Harvey and Michael, Sotheby's has a lot to offer, and at the end, it depends on what works for you. I like the events. I've been doing that since I've started the business, participating in real estate shows in Dubai, the Cityscape, in China, in Shanghai, the LPS, attending the GNE, the One Summit. We were planning to go last April to Chicago for the ARIA convention, building the network and based on meeting real people, not virtually, though what we've gained from the COVID period and experience would remain ongoing post-COVID era, but because the world would be different, it's not going to be the same. However, the real things, meeting real people, going physical showings, and we want like switch that with virtual for good. That might ease up the process in selling and buying, and filter it, but not getting into place instead of physical and meet people and talk to them. Social media is a strong tool to me, events, and that's pretty much building the personal connection with agents and clients. That would be the strongest tools I would use, under, of course, the brand and global reach and everything. We have one of the strongest brands in the world, I guess. Like having that blue card would make a difference, definitely.
Yeah. Ryan.
Yeah, I think to echo what everyone's saying, I mean, we work for a pretty spectacular company, and there's so many smart people in it, and I think it's crazy that people don't take advantage of it. And I think you will find that especially people in other markets are pretty, open with their playbook and just like to talk and brainstorm as to what's working and what's not. And I think you'll start to find similarities in different markets. Chicago has got its own political problems right now, primarily with, increasing property taxes and state income taxes. So I have kind of intentionally looked to where, rather than feeder markets coming to us, I'm looking at where people are moving. Florida and Texas are the two big winners there typically, but it's to me, it's a much different experience introducing a client to someone you actually know, trust, and have full confidence. Then you just sort of heard from someone else that this might, be a good person to talk to. Since COVID, we've placed 8 referrals, primarily in those areas. So it's become a new arm of our business, which has been great. And it's the best part about it is those outgoing referrals do not take up very much time. It's really the other agent that's doing the heavy lifting, and I think it's having that dialogue with them. And our approach is basically we're to help support you however we can, but at the same time we'll stay out of your way until you ask us to step in. So I think that's been really important. Social media has been a pretty invaluable tool, and I think there's some sensitivity around everything going on. How do you keep selling in this environment? We've had some success highlighting different features within the property that clients have done that seems to resonate well, whether it's building out wine rooms, or I had a client that turned his terrace into a putting green. He was big into golf, but it's finding these little ways that people have adapted their house essentially to make it more conducive to spending time in it. So I think that's been interesting. And then there's something with the exposure of working for this company. I can't help but wonder, and I don't know exactly how it works, but 3 out of 5 of our last buyers have come from out of town. So I've got to believe that it's something the marketing department is doing has some impact on that.
Thank you. Stan, you're in HQ City, so tell us.
Yeah, I think that everyone here has spent years, right, working at Sotheby's, built relationships city by city, lunch by lunch, late night after late night, event after event. But now in this part of the crystal ball, which I think is clear for me, that we are in an increased risk environment, us and our clients. And our clients are seeing and feeling this additional risk. And I believe strongly that it is our interpersonal relationships, the trust that we've built between each of us as individuals, and then the overriding trust that Sotheby's International Realty as a brand has brought to us over some hundreds of years as the original core auction brand. So when we're doing a deal today, it's not unlikely, as with one of the people on the screen today, that one deal is going to hinge on the other, and that we're in communication and talking to that same client from city to city, and they may have another apartment on the market in Dubai at the same time with Sotheby's. So I think along with a kind of flight to quality to help to reduce risk in these unknown times, there's going to be a flight to relationship. And I think that one of the things for me that has been very freeing about this time is we've kept the blue. I'm still in my suit and tie. It's New York, so I put on my suit and tie for today. But my social media is just as likely to have me, rolling around in the grass or doing a sing-along with friends and, putting that on the Woolworth Instagram page live. So there's also a kind of humanization that has come out of this dehumanizing time of being locked in these 4 walls that some of us been locked in. It's been a little more extreme for Manhattan. We cannot show at all. In fact, an agent can get a fine up to $10,000 for showing up at a showing. So we've really had to stay within the confine. I'm now in green. I'm so used to Zoom, I'm not even sure if I can see someone face to face without hugging them and, running up to them. But the brand itself has always had strength. I think that strength is amplified now. People need to feel safe. They want to know what they're buying has been vetted, that it has value, and that the deal we're doing today, the deal that Harvey and I did recently at one of the buildings in Miami, deals that Michael, that we are not just working the deal. This is not a time for just deals. It's a time that you've hired a group of advisors working in multiple cities who can advise you in a very unsure time, not just because we're going to get a hard commission, but because we're going to have you and have had you as a client for many years and plan to have you as a client for many years to come. And that kind of trust, money can't buy. Only the relationships and watching how many people you were able to bring together on a midday and how many people in our network will watch this after the taping. It's this that our clients want. They want safety. They want to know that I said that he's a good guy, that she's a great person, that that person's a great human being. I've known them this long. I'm going to know them forever. We're a relationship-based company. We're a part of the advisors that you have, attorneys, architects, accountants, real estate broker. We're not down on the totem pole the way some real estate brokers who are transactional can find themselves. We're right there in that inner circle that our clients count on. And I think that's part of what we're delivering.
Yeah. To continue from that, I 100% believe that the brand has personally helped me in my career in terms of the trust and the credibility. That's 100% true. I mean, the amazing thing, I've worked in other real estate companies before Sotheby's, but that blue business card, I think, can get you into any door in the entire world. In terms of a developer, lawyer's office, you know, very high profile VIPs that we work with, which I believe is why our company is very successful in the luxury market for sure. To add on to that, the credibility of our colleagues and our, you know, our offices, I think is really important. And the thing that I believe facilitated that from the brand side is that I know that, you know, we have a very strong referral system that's built in, that's managed well, where even if you haven't necessarily, you know, done business with the agent in another market that you're giving referral to, you know that also there's an element of trust in the brand that's also gonna, you know, protect your client and protect you to make sure that, you know, you do make the money out of the deal, which is a big thing because we feel a lot more comfortable in Sotheby's to just pass on referrals. Also, to add to the idea that, you know, we're handling portfolios of clients with across the world, that's a very important thing. When I was back in Dubai, I had a client, he had a luxury listing in the Palm Jumeirah, it was a villa. Then he said, oh, you know, I know that you have an office in Los Angeles. You know, I have a property there that I want to sell. Would you have a look at it? At that time I was in Dubai. I called a colleague that I knew. I said, can you go take a look at this property? We end up getting the listing. It turned out to be the highest priced condo ever sold in West Hollywood. I literally passed on, you know, the client, and I 100% trusted in the company and in the agent, and the deal got done. That was for nearly $5 million. So that was a great example. Another thing about our brand that I think is amazing, a lot of companies, I believe, shout a lot about the tech tools that they have. Some companies are maybe even known for that. But it's interesting to me because when I look at our competitors and the tools that they offer, I believe that we've kind of had those tools all along. They haven't been created during COVID. They were not reactionary during COVID, which I think has helped us be successful during this quarantine period. We already had the tools in place. So those are all the things that I just think are amazing about our brand and selling developments. So my next question, there's been a lot of movement across the country and globally. People now are definitely redefining how and where they live and they work. A lot of people have realized they can be remote. What feeder markets have you been seeing buyers from recently? I want to know which markets your clients have maybe been moving to, or where have they been coming from if they're coming to you? Shall we start with Michael?
Great. Well, Boston has seen a shift in the last 5 to 10 years. We're so diverse in both education, biotech, that we're seeing a shift into where these buyers are coming from. And we've really turned quite global, where normally, your third or your fourth home may be London or Paris, and now they're really looking to Boston. And we see that trend continuing. A lot of instances, we see parents buying very expensive properties for their children while they're going to school here. We don't see that stopping at all. We also have our domestic feeder markets, of course, which, typically are, Manhattan, Chicago, Miami. So what I think what's really changed for Boston is the diversity and where the people are coming from.
Okay. Harvey, Miami.
Sure. I think I touched on this in my dialogue previously a little bit, but I'll get into a little more. Miami is always been a very big New York market. So in the East Coast USA, we even see, Chicago, LA, these markets. And it's funny, but there's definitely, I think with the tax situations in these areas, in these cities, it definitely creates a real, interest for people to come to buy something in Florida. So that has definitely been a huge market. Those have been huge markets for us, and they're continuing. They're not stopping. I mean, we're constantly getting buyers inquiries out of New York, Chicago, LA, Boston. I mean, these markets are really big for us. And it used to be just, about getting a place and getting out of the winter and this, but now we're seeing people really, I'm not saying there's an exodus out of New York and people don't want to leave New York. I'm not saying that. So Stan, I love you. Don't kill me. I'm not saying that. But I'm seeing people that really kind of just maybe want to have a Florida residency to avoid the tax thing. And, my sister's an example. She's a partner at Price Waterhouse in New York. She's been with them for like 10 years. And she recently became a Florida resident just because she saves, quite a bit of money. And I'm noticing a lot of people are wanting to do that. So that has been a big push for us. I think it will continue to be a big push for us. And believe it or not, we have a very strong local market. Miami's a funny city because when it comes to new development, because Miami's very fun and flashy and sexy, and it's always about the whole development industry. I've been selling it for 100 years. But the development industry in Miami is all about what's the next best thing, and people are always looking, what's coming. So there's so many buyers on a local level who are, just constantly wanting to upgrade and do more. So there's a local buyer component. You have the East Coast USA and the LA and the tax component, and it's definitely more domestic right now. I would say that the market is probably 90% domestic versus a few years ago where we had South Americans buying and Brazilian buying and Mexico City was buying, and these markets were, huge. But, with the currency changes and all of that, I mean, that happens. I know Stan probably has that too, because New York is incredibly international, more so than we are. But again, we're seeing it's strictly a domestic market, and it's really coming from the areas that, I just spoke about.
Thank you. Ray.
So Toronto as international city, we get a high percentage of the immigration that comes to Canada every year. Having that said, the growth is just consistent and steady. The numbers, we know the numbers of the immigrants every year, the government set, so we can expect what demand would be generated. And that's the mainstream for buyers, for myself, and for the city, of course, and international students as well. And the growth in the city, like Toronto has become a tech hub in North America, and it's growing. Many companies are taking Toronto as a headquarter for their operations in Canada. Like Google just announced a couple of months ago, one of their biggest offices in Canada, in Toronto downtown. That all those together, they just generate a steady, solid demand every year. And the problem here is the supply doesn't meet the demand. So we're always, there's a shortage in supply, and that creates the overheating market situation that we've faced many times during the past few years. So having that said, I think within few months, we will get over the COVID thing situation, and the ball will get rolling again. The activity we're going to see or we're seeing now will continue, and it will just add up, and things will be fine. We're comfortable from the market, and yeah, we're looking forward for more business.
Ryan.
I think so. I just got a text message, ironically, about this. So someone in Florida just showed a $16 million house to a gentleman I played golf with last weekend. But it just shows you how many people here are, transitioning out of here. I'd say the deals that have come in, are kind of random. I don't see it's not like I don't see Seattle just moving to Chicago necessarily, but the deals I mentioned earlier were Boston, Denver, Seattle. I think those were kind of one-off based on jobs. I think what we're really seeing are, to Harvey's point earlier, to move to Florida or Texas is about a 10 savings in terms of taxes. And I think you combine that with the fact that the COVID has taught people to work remotely, and how kind of the Zoom culture we live in, people are able to work remote and run things. And I think some companies have become very efficient where people are realizing, even if a family here spends, say, 2 months a year in Florida, if they can get that up to 6, they can save this money. And I think that, selling a South Florida lifestyle isn't the hardest thing to do. So I think it's interesting, but I think a lot of people are taking a serious look at moving to other markets and kind of restructuring how their whole setup is. Yeah.
Stan.
Every time I visit one of you, and I grew up south of Boston, so that always feels good. It's like going home. I always think, why don't I live in Turks and Caicos? Why don't I live in Miami? Why don't I live in Malibu? This is so nice. Chicago is one of my favorite cities. Toronto, part of it is that I don't want to compete with this set of brokers because they're too good, including you, Tamara. So I'll leave your markets to you. But part of it is also just a strategic business plan for me. And that is that through it all, and this is my 20th year in Manhattan real estate, we've never had to really think about any particular sector or feeder market or any other singular thing driving our market, because it's such a global market. I'm just as likely to be selling an apartment to a family who has had multi-generational wealth as someone who made their money 6 months ago inventing some small piece of plastic in a small remote country. Because when you buy in New York, you're essentially saying, I've arrived. You may still own in Miami and in Boston and in Chicago and all over the world. But it isn't until you've got at least a foothold in New York, which for some people is 600,000, for other people it's 60 million. That still is the measure. And it will continue, in my opinion, to be one of the places that one wants to have a home in the world that they can use for themselves and their family, going in and out of college, going in and out of jobs, going in and out of all of those things. So I stay in New York because I have observed after 9/11, after the Great Recession, that just when you thought all the money was coming out of one country, by the time you could pivot your marketing to that country only, all of a sudden that country wasn't coming anymore. And you're working with another country because, to Harvey's point, I think, or Michael, there's been a devaluation, right? So we had this big rush from Turkey. And fortunately, I'd been an exchange student in Turkey. So I have some connections there. We started doing some business in Turkey. And what was interesting, and was one of the, I think, buyers who probably set the tone for I bet what some of the deals will look like as we come through this is someone coming in internationally, buying a 3-bedroom, solid, maybe not luxury, uber luxury, but solid, nice 3-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, a beautiful house in Connecticut that they would use on the weekends in the winter to have a fireplace and go hang out, and then a small house out in East Hampton. So when it's summertime, they've got a place to go. So there's East Hampton, Connecticut, and New York, and that doesn't even count the fact that that family probably had an apartment in Miami, as I know they did in Istanbul and another big city in Turkey. So it just goes back to that same beginning part, that really we're all working together. It just depends on where the focus of our client is in that moment. And we're obviously all here at the ready, so that when Manhattan opens up, we're ready to go. In the meantime, hopefully I'll be selling more apartments with Harvey and with Michael and with Ryan and Ray and with you and with everybody, right? Because we're all doing it together. It's at the same time. Every piece of marketing that I put out, every crazy video of me singing on a sing-along is reminding people, wait, I know, maybe I should call Stan before we go to Miami for the weekend. He might know someone there. And that is what we're doing. And I think we're just going to be, I think we're just reminded by this how much more we can do with that. And I know we're certainly pivoting in my team and our group of referring agents to laser focus that. And we're working on that as we speak.
Thank you. So this will be the last question, and then I'm going to move to Q&A because I've got a very full chat box here. The last question is, do you believe that developers need to build differently moving forward? Or do you think that buyer demand and requirements will go back to pre-COVID? Let's start with Boston.
Well, I think the big unknown is the habits and the patterns that we've established in the last couple of months, and how many of them are going to be temporary and how many of them are going to be permanent. Some of the luxury residential developments that you're seeing have hotel components to them. And the hotel industry right now is taking a major hit. So the St. Regis, for instance, this is the only, actually there's one other, but the second St. Regis in the country that does not have a hotel component to it. Has all the services of the St. Regis, but not a hotel component. We think that works well in the current environment. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen long-term and how many of these habits or social distancing will remain permanent. I think it's pretty safe to say that nobody's going to be running out to 25,000 square people arenas or things like that. But I think we're naive to think that it's not going to change amenities and it's not going to change how we do business in certain capacities.
Okay. Harvey, you work with lots and lots of developers down there in Florida. What has been the developer reaction to this? And do you think that things will be built differently now?
Tamara, thanks, Tamara. The answer is yes. Things will be built differently. I firmly believe that. I think the biggest part that will be different will really be about the number of units being built, the size of the project. For example, if you look at various places in Miami, in downtown Miami or Brickell, for example, there's multiple, these large scale developments that have 800 units, 500 buildings that have 575 units, that type of tower. I think those days, I would imagine them being kind of over. I don't want to say over forever, but I think that's kind of done for a while. I think it's all about the boutique. It's all about specialized boutique living. You know, I think like a lot of the trend is, especially with COVID, everybody's saying, oh, people are running to houses now. It's all about houses. The condos are over. That's totally not true. I think certain buildings are over that have 800 units in it or something. You know, I think there's going to be some value issues into the future, appreciation issues, building issues, that type of thing. But in a very high-end boutique residential luxury building, 1000 Museum, I happen to have one. You know, it's only 84 units on 62 stories. So it's only 2 units per floor, 1 unit per floor. So it's very private. Feels like the culture of a single family home. So I think that, I think that the developers are going to look at doing smaller scale boutique buildings. We're working on a few of them right now. We have a couple in Fort Lauderdale, one I'm hopefully launching that I'm going to try to get approval on tomorrow from the city. But these are the types, it's definitely really about size, number of units. And I think that's really where the trend is. And I think that's where ultimately the buyer's demand is going to stay with for a while.
Yeah, I agree. Ray.
Definitely there's going to be changes. However, it's going to be different from market to another. For example, downtown Toronto, some building development lots, you can't have a boutique building for such high density plot and price and the cost. It all matters. So even if there are going to be large number of units in the building, there are going to be some measures that will be taken into consideration, and the social distancing and safety and healthy measures will be in place for longer term from now on. And boutique buildings is a great option, of course, but I would say it will be different from market to another and from location to another, depending on the cost. Having larger units would be a higher price tag, but not affordable to everyone. So in downtown in Toronto, when you one of the good or plus points for pre-construction or the condo market is the affordability. Getting a condo 500, 600, 700 square feet for a price tag that would be affordable to people, that's what makes a difference these days. It's about the price tag, not about the size anymore. But there are going to be some changes. I think we need some time to figure out what really needs to be done in that regard to change the development and the way of building and the amenities, size and everything. But yeah, we're going to see some changes definitely.
Ryan?
Yeah, we're actually in the middle of designing a new project we'll be launching in the coming months here. So that's been a pretty popular topic as to how do we adapt, what can we do to potential buyers there. Harvey's point earlier where they mentioned, a lot of people want houses. Well, I've got people that want out of a single family home in the city because they don't think it's safe and they want to go to the suburbs. Well, that same house that they don't want, I've got 3 other clients that would. So I think people have just sort of shuffled priorities and moved things around. And I don't think, we're in an unprecedented time. So I think everyone's going to just look at it a little different. In terms of the actual condo building, we've got basically an optional den that can be, people can either have a very large living room, they could add this den in there. We've gone as far as to talk about, do we brand that den as like a Zoom room or a Peloton room and, outfit it with rubber floors and a floor outlet if it's a Peloton, or the built-ins for the office. Every unit in this building will be about 27 units. We are talking to one client that wants to combine 4 units and make a 10,000 square foot one floor unit. But every unit also has an outdoor terrace, and we're putting nano walls on there to open it up to kind of give an indoor outdoor living feel. So we're trying to create as much flexibility as we can. We've also pre-planned which units can be combined. They're on the same floor or duplexing up and down. That way we've got options as people come look at them. So I think until we get people in there, we won't know exactly, but we're starting to do some focus groups and really understand how these people are looking at it. I think one complaint I get from people in condos right now is, they need separation. If they've got their kids, doing school on the iPads and they've got, one of them's trying to do a Zoom call and someone else is on the phone. The open living floor plan, I think, was very popular, but I could see things maybe moving to compartmentalize for some families. So we're trying to be able to cater to both.
Yeah. Stan?
Yeah, without using everyone's valuable time, because I know there's a lot of questions. Yes, 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 and yes. Small boutique buildings, definitely in the short to midterm, are where it's at. In New York City, we're lucky to have, one of our most beautiful buildings, the Woolworth Tower Residences, only 32 units, but we're now down into the high 20s in number of owners because people have bought their full floor. And at that building, it's never more than 2 apartments per floor. We have a wonderful building up on the Upper West Side, represented by colleagues of mine in the office, 555 West End Avenue. It's only 13 apartments there. And the recent sellout, which was globally renowned for setting the record last year with the highest penthouse sale through my colleagues, again, 48 units. So this trend on the luxury side, I think, was already moving along. The COVID piece kind of meets where luxury was. When I sit and listen to smart people like Ken Horn, the CEO of Alchemy Properties, he's looking to technology, touchless elevators that you can just walk into the elevator, it knows from your key card where you're going, all of these pieces. There's no question the developers are looking closely at that, but boutique and luxury and quality of life is what everyone's looking at. And if you weren't looking at it before, you're certainly looking at it now from a developer perspective.
Agreed. We're seeing the same here. Okay, I'll just go to the Q&As right now. Well, a lot of the things have already been answered, which is good. I'm just checking the chat box right now. There's a question for Michael. Do you feel that branded residences have a built-in success element during this time because buyers may feel more secure?
I think it puts a good housekeeping seal. These branded developments, what I touched on earlier was a lot of these brands, whether it's the Four Seasons or Raffles, which is now coming to Boston, or the St. Regis, they're typically both a residential component and a hotel component. I think people will always be looking towards convenience. And I think having the branded development adds an additional layer of security to it.
Okay. And I have one question for Harvey. They're asking, how are the New York people aware of your project? Were they aware before and acting now, or did you do additional marketing to reach those potential buyers?
It's a good question. We've always tried to work with the New York market. We've been working with the New York market since really a year or two after the inception of the project, which dates back to late 2013. We actually registered the project in New York, which is a process, in order to market, if you have a building in Miami or South Florida, in order to market to New York, in order to even market to agents in New York or do anything in New York or advertise or send email blasts to New York, you have to be registered. It's a legal process. So we decided to go through that. So we've been working with the New York market for years. We've worked with our affiliates there. We've done events in New York. I've been going there on and off for the last 5 years with the building. I think there's more now are happening because look, the developer's been negotiating more right now. They think they can get a better deal, which they can right now. Obviously the tax situation in New York has, helped out a lot, where buyers, are now wanting to come down to get a residence. And of course, look, the buildings, I think Stan mentioned this, the building's done. So when you have a building done, it's not like we're walking through, a buyer from New York comes and we're taking him through the, the building in the past, and it wasn't, it'll be done in, 9 months from now or a year from now, or, they're walking into a product that they buy and they're paying cash and they're closing in a week. I literally have a deal right now on the table with a guy from New York who's closing in 48 hours. as soon as we can deliver title, which really will take us a couple days, but they're working on it right now. So these things, it's really, there's many factors, but New York's been a very big market for us and one that we've been focusing on for quite some time.
Thank you. And
Sure.
we've run out of time, so if anyone has any additional questions, they can just email me and I'll make sure that our panel gets back to you. Thank you everyone for this. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for putting this together. It's a lot of work to do. So thank you for leading us. And guys, I'll see you all later. And tomorrow, look forward to seeing you soon.
For sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.